And Western powers said to be behind TPLF's renewed terror. Hello and thank you for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. The Council of Ministers discussed a draft policy to open up the banking sector to foreign investors in its 13th regular meeting today and decided to implement it. Opening up the banking sector to foreign investors to support the sector's services with knowledge and technology is said to be crucial. The move is set to help elevate the country's economy to a higher level of connectivity with the international market, to increase the competitiveness, efficiency, and effectiveness of the financial sector, to have sufficient financial supply, and to facilitate the supply of foreign currency. It is also set to increase job opportunities and to ensure continuous economic growth via efficiency and global competitiveness. The TPLF's desire is steeped in destroying Ethiopia and shunning all peace initiatives. This is according to Ethiopia's ambassador to the United States, Seleshi Bekele, in an exclusive interview with the CNN. The terrorist TPLF, according to the ambassador, has showed no interest in promoting peace and has instead begun to harass people in order to ignite a war. Kasahun Jane brings us up to speed.
The Ethiopian ambassador to the U.S., Seleshi Bekele joins me now live from Washington, D.C.
In an exclusive interview with the CNN, Ethiopia's ambassador to the United States has accused Tedros Adhanom, Director General of the WHO, of wrongdoings for his involvement in the banditry that helped the terrorist TPLF organization destabilize the country. He added that Adhanom never brings up the dispersed schools, hospitals, and loss in human capital, and therefore an Amhara regional states as he is a state within TPLF's destructive motives.
Ethiopian government is equally concerned for the people of Tigray as a legitimate and democratically elected government. The voice you are playing back to me is actually the former executive of the TPLF, not trying to work towards establishing peace, rather aggravate the conflict and simply siding.
But he's the director of the WHO, sharing his personal thoughts and experiences.
In this current conflict, he is not impartial. He is only talking one side. During the previous wave of attack of humanitarian wave in Amhara and the Tigray region, in Amhara and Afar region, he hasn't spoken a single sentence. When 2,000 schools, 40 hospitals, 453 health stations, 1,850 health posts were dismantled as WHO Director General. That shouldn't be impartial. He was always talking, using the media, the available instrument at his disposal for the...
Claiming that Ethiopia was engaged in a wide range of initiatives to assist the underprivileged citizens of the Tigray state, Ambassador Bekele underscored that the government of Ethiopia made every attempt to end the conflict and to north peacefully.
This is in a warring region. There is no peace established in the Tigray region. Basically, the government was trying to work out actually a different way of restoring service until the peace gets established and permanent ceasefire established. And among those, you can see fuel was being supplied. Money was transferred through third parties. There were also other talks how to reestablish the other services like the electricity, telecom, and so on through third party. There was agreement with World Bank resourcing so that this could come into effect. For example, UNOPS can support those kind of reestablishing the state services. Imagine how could you establish services when the other party is occupying and preventing the movement of normal civilians from Ethiopian side.
The ambassador emphasized that the government, on the other hand, has repeatedly made it clear to Ursulites and the general public that security and administrative arrangements within the Tigray state must be made and put in place to allow for technical repair work to be done on the ground to restore services.
Basically, the attack that was launched from TPLF, you can see, the level of invasion that was covering almost the entire northern Amhara region and that of Afar region in two directions first, then expanded to the 5 different directions. So in the run-up to August 24th, basically Ethiopia was working on the peace talk, established the peace committee led by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, and many high officials prepared roadmap actually to sit together and make the peace talk happen.
It is to be recalled the terrorist TPLF carried out attacks on the eastern France, in Bisover, Zobel, and in Wolga at various areas, while ignoring every peace proposal made by the government.
Ethiopian Defense Minister Abraham Belai held discussions with Vice President and Chairman of the Infrastructural Cluster Taban Deng and President Salva Kiir's Security Affairs Advisor Tutgat Luak, according to Ethiopian Embassy in Juba. Following the ministers' briefings on the current affairs of Ethiopia, the South Sudanese high officials have reaffirmed their country's firm stance to stand by the side of Ethiopia in any situation. The two sides have exchanged views with regards to peace and security affairs of the region and underscored the need for cooperation among the two states. Moreover, the two sides emphasized the importance of infrastructural connectivity between the two countries. Accordingly, they have agreed to the implementation of road, electric power transmission, as well as oil infrastructures within a short period of time, not only for the benefit of both countries, but for the benefit of the entire region as well. Some Ethiopian advocacy organizations worldwide announced that the TPLF's belligerent is the cause for the absence of peace in northern Ethiopia. They also condemned the forceful recruitment and use of child soldiers by TPLF, which has dragged them as human waves in an obvious violation of international law and utter disregard for human life. Jerusalem Betzha tells you more.
The Ethiopian advocacy organizations are global coalitions formed to advance human rights, rule of law, good governance, the protection of the environment, and sustainable development in Ethiopia. A joint communique issued by these organizations indicated that the one soldier per family policy in exchange for food aid to commit to a reckless violence insurgency is deplorable. Once again, the TPLF is actively engaged in serious human rights violations, attacking civilians in Amhara and Afar states, the communique said. The advocacy organizations further denounced the defending silence of the international community in condemning such blatant violations of international law by the TPLF. Finally, the organizations urged the international community to reiterate the importance of having a peace process under the undisputed leadership role of the African Union, scaling up cooperation and assistance to support the AU-led process, recognizing efforts made by the government in providing unfettered access to humanitarian assistance and its commitment to resolving the conflict in Tigray through peaceful means, the organizations said are crucial steps.
The TPLF's latest offensive is assisted by Western nations and their media outlets. This, says Graham Peebles, who is an independent writer and charity worker, violated the humanitarian truce agreed with the Ethiopian government and shattered all hopes for peace. Shagao Yamata goes through the rest of the article.
The TPLF began the war with the Ethiopian government in November 2020 by attacking the northern command of the Ethiopian Defense Force. This time, the TPLF inflicted unimaginable atrocities on civilians, including gang rapes and destruction of properties of the Amhara and Afar people. However, the joint Ethiopian forces chased the TPLF's ragtag army all the way to Mekelle. The TPLF, that is not content with the level of human suffering resulting from their initial barbarism, are determined to kill, rape their Ethiopian brethren, and destroy properties again in their frenzied quest for power. Graham Peebles, who is an independent writer and charity worker, wrote about the renewed TPLF war against the Ethiopian people on Eurasia Review News and Analysis. As to the writer, the latest offensive, which was launched on 24 August 2022, violated the humanitarian truce agreed with the Ethiopian government and shattered the temporary peace. After a fragile ceasefire lasting just 5 months, the TPLF has once again initiated violent conflict with federal forces in northern Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government stated that the terrorist TPLF ignored all the peace alternatives and launched an attack around the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions on August 24. Stealing from the UN to enable war is nothing new for the TPLF, according to Peebles. The TPLF plundered 12 full fuel tankers with 570,000 liters of fuel in a WFP warehouse in Mekelle this August, which were to be used solely for humanitarian purposes for the distribution of food, fertilizer, and other emergency relief items, according to Stefan Dujarric. This approach, however, is wasted on the TPLF, since their aim is clear: to fracture Ethiopia, inject discord, and hopefully overthrow the government with the help of Western nations. Concerning the Western support, Peebles stated that the main sponsor of the TPLF terror is the US government, together with the UK and to a lesser degree the European Union. Peebles says all of these entities have backed the TPLF, empowering them financially, politically, and throughout their war on the Ethiopian state. It is widely believed militarily. With Western political support and lasting TPLF influence in Washington, London, New York, and Geneva has come media collusion. The CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, The Guardian, New York Times all have been guilty of disinformation, biased or just purely researched stories, ranging from outright lies to nauseating both-sidism, as with Voice of America reporting of the recent theft of WFP fuel by TPLF fighters witnessed by UN staff.
Unlike the rest of the world, Ethiopia rings in its new year, Enqutatash, on September 11 and not on January 1. This is because of Ethiopians' unique calendar, September, or Meskerem in Amharic language, to be the first month of the year. Among the most fascinating practices of Ethiopians is a group of Ethiopian girls go around and performing a song called Abebayehosh. ATV English will look into this in its news stories and news analysis. Happy New Year!
Each year's regrets are envelopes in which messages are found for the new year. The Ethiopian New Year stands before us like a chapter in a book waiting to be written and to be embraced for what's to unfold. ETV English will go with the New Year vibe, bringing you all the latest. Happy Ethiopian New Year!
Ethiopian cuisine is one of the most delicious and unique ones. People love it because it marries together earthly, spicy, tart, and sour flavors. While celebrating Ethiopian New Year, people love enjoying dorowet, the spicy chicken stew, which is usually served with hard-boiled eggs. We will bring you stories ranging from the New Year vibe to the culture itself.
Happy Ethiopian New Year!
Welcome back. Ethiopia's ambassador to China, Tashome Toga, gave a media briefing to the South China Morning Post and China Radio International CRI at the embassy regarding TPLF's attack in the northern part of the country and current national issues. In his briefing, the ambassador explained that ignoring the Ethiopian government's repeated calls for a peaceful resolution to the conflict, the TPLF has started the war again and is committing heinous atrocities on the people of Tigray and the people of the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions. It is also looting food and fuel supplies that were transported to the Tigray region for humanitarian aid purposes, said the ambassador. Moreover, he called on the international community to refrain from the unbalanced expression of both-sidism, to condemn the atrocities being committed by the TPLF and support the government's call for peace.
ጉልበታችን ብረት አልነበረም። ጉልበታችን ትጥቅ አልነበረም። ጉልበታችን ኢትዮጵያዊነት ነበር።
እኛ ያለን አገራችን በክፉ የሚመለከታት፣ እኛ ያለን ጥላሸት ሊቀባት የሚፈልግ ካለ በምን ታምር ሊታሰብ አይችልም።
የግድ መጥፋት አለ። ይህ ኃይል ካልጠፋ ኢትዮጵያ ሰላም አታገኝም ብቻ ሳይሆን ከጀርባው የሚጋልቡትም አርፎ አይቀመጡ።
In business news, Ethiopia and Saudi Fund for Development have signed a memorandum of understanding on the debt service suspension initiative. Minister of Finance Ahmed Shide met with the ambassador of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to Ethiopia, Fahad Al-Humaydani, and delegates from the Saudi Fund for Development. On the occasion, the Memorandum of Understanding on the Debt Service Suspension Initiative between the government of Ethiopia and the Saudi Fund for Development was signed. They also had a fruitful discussion on matters related to boosting the economic cooperation between the two countries. And finally, from across Africa, torrential rains and floods in Sudan have destroyed tens of thousands of acres of land, raising fears of food insecurity. More than 100 people have died and thousands of homes are destroyed. Tegastar Nisa presents Al Jazeera's report.
Abdullah Hamza has spent the last 4 months tending to his farms, hoping to profit for his harvest. But when torrential rains and floods hit Sudan's Jazeera state, much of his land was submerged, destroying the crops.
We have about 1,300 acres that were farmed this season. The rains and floods have covered about 300 acres. All what is completely destroyed is a complete disaster. Some are trying to drain the water, but as a farmer, this summer season has been a complete loss.
Heavy rains and floods have affected more than 90,000 acres in Jazeera state, home to the largest governmental agriculture project in Sudan. More than 130,000 farmers grow crops such as corn and cotton for the country and international markets. But rain and floods have affected that as well as the economy of the state. Authorities say hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of produce have been lost.
As farmers, this is a loss for us. This season, I'll not be having anything to sell. The corn and anything else I planted is gone. I've lost more than 1 million Sudanese pounds because of the flooding.
And farmers' income are not the only concern. The flooding of farmland comes to a critical time for Sudan. The United Nations says a third of the people in the country, or about 50 million, are already struggling to get enough food, and with flood waters covering tens of thousands of acres, that number may rise even further. Jazeera is known as the breadbasket of Sudan, supplying half of the crops it needs. Any disruption in that supply could raise market prices in a country where more than half of the people live in poverty. Authorities say that they've put plans in place to reduce the impact of floods.
We will split up the farming cycles to make up for the losses the farmers have incurred. The amount of lands farmers plant on during the winter season will be increased based on the area of land that has been destroyed by the rains.
But farmers like Abdullah fear their lands may not recover in time for the coming season and they may suffer more economic losses.
You're watching Addis News Hour. Here's a reminder of the stories making headlines. TPLF's belligerents said to prolong Ethiopia's plight. And Western powers said to be behind TPLF's renewed terror. That's all we had for now. I'm Tabitha John. Many thanks for watching. Have a good night and do take care.